Hello guys, it's Chill here again. So Autocrato is out in the same banner as Lucretia. If you're unlucky, you might end up with a lot of this guy instead of the one that you really want. So if you really must make Autocrato work, let's think about how he is good and where he is bad at. I'm not really going to look at any of his other abilities or troops or anything else. We're only going to consider that he must be infantry. You can take a look at his talent. When entering battle, all stats excluding health are increased by 20%. So while this is pretty good, it doesn't really do a whole lot if you're going to play him as an AoE damage dealer, which I'm going to assume most of the times he's going to be played as an AoE. So this first part of the talent probably not going to be relevant at all. Next part, reduces damage dealt by all enemies within 3 blocks for every 1 block the enemy has moved. Damage dealt is reduced by 4% up to 20%. So what is this good at? We have to consider like what sort of units move up to 5 blocks, and they have to be attacking within range of Autocrato. So within his 3 blocks. The first that comes to mind is Aries. Reducing Aries' damage by 20% is actually huge. That pretty much makes Aries unable to one-shot as long as you have decent enough enchants. So, Aries, as long as you survive the Aries, you'll be fine. And this pretty much makes sure that you can survive that Aries. Unless you're at half health, heal block on you, then you might still get blown up. So he does that pretty well. Some other units that move a lot of blocks is like Elwyn, but they do have unicorns, and the thing with unicorns is the unicorns deals damage thanks to having their troop bonus, like attacking on either grasslands or on forests or on mountains. So this does reduce some damage, but it doesn't help as much as Bernhardt's aura, which just reduces unicorns' attack by 15%. So it's still okay. Only really good against stuff like Aries, maybe Leon. Nobody really plays Leon. And other than that, you really have to make sure that they attack before, or they move before attacking. So in those cases, it's going to be good, but they have to be attacking within 3 blocks of Autocrato. Like if anyone is trying to snipe you from very far away, not going to be doing all that good. So maybe you can survive against Sigma or Zerna, but in those cases, it's better that you have Bernhardt instead of Autocrato, just because of the defense that your units are most likely going to have. And they do a lot better against the lower attack of assassins. So overall, it's not really that amazing of a talent, but it is exceptionally good against Aries. Alright, let's take a look at the other skills that he's most likely going to be bringing. So the 3C Overthrown Order attacks all enemies in 3 straight lines, does a lot of damage, and swaps the positions. That makes them only be able to move in straight lines. Undispellable, if you attack 3 more enemies, reduces the cooldown by 3. So sure, it hits pretty hard. It has pretty good long range. You can play him with Clock. And even without Balance Blade, you already have a 3x6 range. It's going to be 3x7 if you play with Balance Blade. So that's actually pretty decent. Very good range. But what it doesn't do well at is you have to make sure that it hits multiple targets. Otherwise the switching of the positions is not going to matter. And this only swaps positions of the enemies with other enemies. So they're only going to be switched around, this clump. Unlike Leon's 3C, which just scatters the enemies around. So it's going to be very good against tank push teams, preferably late into the battle, where there's a lot of poison fog, or if you're like really running out of space in the middle and you're trying to contest in the middle, you're not going to be having a lot of space to move around anymore. They're going to be moving very little spaces, and then they're going to be taking a lot of damage from this passive that Autocrato is most likely just going to be bringing. Provoke. After dealing damage to an active attack, apply the debuff to the enemy. Provoke after taking action. If they have not moved, it'll do a whole ton of fixed damage to them. For every one block the target has moved, they take reduced damage, and this is undispellable. So this last 2 turns, they're going to be taking quite a bit of fixed damage. A ton of damage if they do not move, and just a decent amount if they do move free. The 3C makes them only be able to move in straight lines, so that can actually make it very awkward for your opponents to position themselves and do something useful. So, while team composition, you can hit multiple enemies like this only if your opponent is playing something like a tank push, where they're trying to clump up around your tanks. They're trying to prevent you from single target sniping off their key units. So as long as you have another strong single target unit like, let's say, Jessica, Lucretia, or something that cannot ignore guard, and they're threatening to one-shot units, then that's going to be good. It forces your opponent to clump up around their tank. They know they're safe from the single target, but that's where Autocrato comes in. And you just rip through their formation like this, swap their positions. If your opponent's tank is swapped out of position, you can snipe one of their units. Like if, say, this is the tank, after they got their position swapped, now you can snipe off like that unit over there. Unless they don't have 2 range guard up. So it's going to be a bit risky playing him like this. And it's not going to be easy either. You're doing a lot just to make Autocrato work. Because all of this damage comes from fixed damage. And they can reduce the damage taken if they just move a whole bunch of blocks. So if your opponent is able to move, I believe, 6 or more blocks, then it doesn't do any damage left. Because each block move reduces the damage taken by 0.5 up to like 3, right? So I think that's how it works. I'm not really sure. If you move 6 or more blocks, you take no damage. So they can just move really far away and take no damage, or they bring Bracer. Or they have Hilda's Aura, which reduces fixed damage taken by 35%. Or they have Jugler's Magic Aura, the Great Dragon Barrier, which also makes all their units around him immune to magic or immune to fixed damage. So there is actually a lot of things that makes this not a very strong passive, because this does not say that it ignores fixed damage immunity. So you can actually make a lot of units that are short-legged like Bozo work because they bring Bracer. Like Bozo, Reen, they have 3 movement, 4 movement. So even if they're not moving a whole lot, they don't take any damage. And all the other units that are meta really right now have quite a bit of good mobility. So most of the other units are not really going to care about this passive. And if you really want to make this damage stick, you have to ban out the bracers. And you have to ban out the long legs. That's going to be a struggle. And that's without considering that you also have to land this AoE on multiple targets. Preferably clock. If you clock this, I can see him actually doing quite well in PvP matches. Clock this, AoE, force them to only move in lines. Do it again. Apply more of these fixed damage debuffs. And they might explode to all the fixed damage. So, good against short-legged, non-bracer units. Bad against any sort of bracers. Bad against Hilda. Bad against Jugler. And both Hilda and Jugler are very meta tanks. Your opponents are probably going to be playing them. And if you try to ban out one, they can first pick the other. So I don't really see Autocrat working out until we get to a point where neither of the tanks are meta anymore. Hilda is always going to be relevant though, but at some point we can see Jugler dropping off. Jugler is not that great of a magic tank, but he can still do it. Yeah, well, that's all I have to say for him for now. So, see you guys next time.